Hello and welcome to this afternoon's session. My name's Paul Howard. I'm a mining analyst with Canaccord Genuity in Perth, and I'm delighted to be here to chair this afternoon's session. You guys will be rewarded. You're in here for a treat. Look, in my opinion, this is the best end of the market. This is the Explorer developers. There's been real excitement in this part of the world. And look, there's 6 sessions at Diggers over the next few days. This one has had year-to-date the biggest average growth per stock. I'm an analyst, so I'm going to give you guys numbers. 268% year-to-date average of the 11 stories we're going to hear this afternoon. And if you guys had invested in the 11 guys that we're going to see at last Diggers, you'd be 280% better off. So look, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's kick this one off. First up, we've got Duncan Craib. Duncan is the Managing Director and CEO of Boss Resources Limited, and it's a 100% owned Honeymoon uranium project in South Australia. Duncan, from 2012 to 2016, Duncan served as the financial director for the US $2.5 billion development and commissioning of the Husab mine in Namibia. So please give Duncan a warm welcome. Thank you.
Oops. In October 2016, I was working on the Husab mine in Namibia, sitting in a management meeting when I received an international telephone call, and I looked at my phone and saw it was an Australian prefix. So I stepped out of the meeting, took the call. It was the chairman of Boss Resources. He said, "Dunk, you guys have just about finished commissioning the Husab mine. What are you going to do next?" I said, "Geez, mate, I hadn't actually thought about it. For the last 8 years, I'd been focused on getting that asset into production." He said, "Well, Boss Resources, having purchased the Honeymoon uranium mine off Uranium One, was assembling a team. I'd earned my stripes. Now was the time to come back and take on a project myself." To be frank, I wasn't 100% certain, so I took the next few weeks doing as much research as I can on Uranium One and the challenges they had to overcome in their process. I've always believed in technical advantages and advancement. So realising something in my gut told me this is an asset, this is an opportunity to take on. And after 16 years of gaining international mining experience, my family and I relocated home to Western Australia for Christmas 2016. And some 2 weeks later, I was driving up to the Honeymoon mine site in South Australia. Before elaborating on to the market conditions, just to refresh you on Boss Resources. Boss Resources owns 100% of the Honeymoon uranium project. Honeymoon is a pure uranium play, brownfield restart project located in South Australia. It has previously produced and exported uranium around the world and went into care and maintenance in 2014. Since that time, we have technically advanced the project by lowering the operating cost and increasing the production profile. We are recognised internationally with global first mover advantage and industry endorsed as Australia's next uranium producer. Our location is about 75 kilometres northwest of Broken Hill in South Australia. South Australia is the premier uranium state in Australia. It hosts 3 of the 4 fully permitted uranium mines, the 4th being Ranger in the Northern Territory, entering into its decommissioning phase. We have full federal and state government support. Port Adelaide has shipped uranium 30 years instant-free with established shipping routes around the globe. From a resource perspective, we have a very respectable 71.62 million pounds of uranium. 34 million pounds of that actually resides on a fully permitted mining licence. Our grade is about 620 ppm, which is very respectable. The resource itself is about 100 metres in depth, perfect for in situ recovery, one of the world's cheapest method of mining resource extraction. When we look at the site, 170 million was spent by the previous vendors, Uranium One, building the site in 2011 and 12. It's in pristine condition. It was built almost a Rolls-Royce of a plant. We have access to road, to rail, our own airstrip. We get our power off the grid. We have our own water. And to the right of the screen there, you can see where the production well fields begin. That is the highest grade resource in excess of 1,000 ppm, where it will account for the first 4 to 5 years of actual production. In January of this year, we completed the feasibility study. We did a base case scenario based on that mining licence that fully permitted. So we only used half our JORC resource. And what we came up with was a staged approach for getting back into production. Stage 1, we can recommence production within 12 months, refurbishing the existing solvent extraction process. Within an additional 12 months, we'll incorporate ion exchange, which will allow us to increase the production profile to £2 million per annum. We have a federal government endorsed export permit to produce in excess and export in excess of £3 million. While stage 3 didn't encompass or wasn't included in our feasibility study, that is the part that we will now start focusing on, having completed that process. Looking at the financial outcomes of the feasibility study, we elected to have a base case uranium price of $50 per pound, and we did that because it's the lowest base price that any uranium operation has in the world. At that level, we can prove that our NPV is 2 to 2.5 times our CapEx, IRR above 40%. Our capital outlay to restart the operation, $63 million US, and our all-in cost, our C3 cost of $32 US per pound, our all-in sustaining cost of $27 US per pound, and cash costs of around $22 US per pound. In the last 6 weeks, we've put out a series of announcements showing that we can reduce that CapEx by an additional 10% and cost structure down by an additional 5%. And that, therefore, has led us to believe that we should do an enhanced feasibility study, which we're now working upon with our study manager, GR Engineering, to come out with in the first half of next year. When I put that into global context, so you can sort of have a comparison against our competitors worldwide, the bubble graph you see in front of you, the buttons themselves, or the bubbles, represent the size of the resource. On the lower left of the quadrant sits Honeymoon. It shows that we have one of the lowest operating costs and lowest capital outlays. The colour of the bubbles represent, as they get darker, the stage of feasibility study. We've finished our feasibility study. What this graph fails, however, to take into account is the permitting aspect, and Honeymoon is fully permitted. We are ready to go. And permitting for this geopolitically sensitive commodity can take significant time and expense. Looking at the market, one of the most common graphs that's shown in the market is, or by most uranium producers, is this slide. It shows spot price compared to term contracts. Spot price is what's readily quoted and the most referred to price. However, we're more focused on the term contract. It's typically about 20 to 25% higher than the spot price. Right now, we've experienced this year a 30% increase in spot prices and the corresponding increase in term contracts. Our plan to get back into production is to sign up to 80% of our offtake in the initial years in term contracts and layer them in to a rising market. It shows there that the majority of producers actually need a base case price of $60 US per pound, and as shown before on the previous slide, term contracts are currently being entered into at the high 30s. Our all-in cost is 32. Infeasibly, we could be in production as we speak. We are staying very close to the market, and we're constantly engaged with fuel buyers of utilities worldwide. We're entering into tendering, such as requests for proposals. We have off-market discussions. And what I'm pleased to report is in the last few months, several of the world's largest utilities are now consigning technical due diligence to engineering consultancy firms to take a deep dive on Honeymoon. We have passed all of those sort of due diligence processes with flying colours. We are there, credibly ready to go and industry endorsed. We're not quite there on price or quantity, but it won't be far away. The reason why we haven't seen a mass outbreak of sort of signing of contracts is because the fuel buyers, and I'll focus more on US-centric because the US accounts for 25 to 30% of the world demand of uranium, fuel buyers have wanted to be aligned to the US administration, and the administration itself has had many challenges with the Russian Suspension Agreement, Iranian waivers, Section 232, and the Nuclear Fuel Working Group. The Russian Suspension Agreement's the final piece in the puzzle, and 2 weeks ago that was resolved. And as a result, we're already seeing some fundamental shifts in the market as fuel buyers are now confident that they can enter into long-term agreements with countries worldwide without fear of sort of going against the grain with the US government. It is likely that these changes will increase the demand of global U3O8 consumption from non-Russian feedstock, and Australia is very well positioned to capitalise on that aspect. What COVID-19 has effectively shown is reliance on a small number of jurisdictions and suppliers for this critical raw product is a dangerous assumption. Geopolitical risk is prevalent, and Australia again is in very good position to capitalise on this. On an annual basis, the World Nuclear Association holds a synopsis in London. This time last year in London, at that point in time, utilities, analysts and producers were all aligned for the first time in 8 years that at that point in time, new supply was required and demand was outstripping primary production. By 2023, demand would outstrip primary production plus inventory. Effectively, what COVID's done is brought that recovery curve forward. In June this year, for example, I was having my weekly catch-up with Chairman Peter O'Connor, who had just joined the board, and I'd had my planned annual break with school holidays. So I felt really awkward taking time off as there was lots going on, but we had been working hard. And Peter said, for goodness sake, take your family holiday. We're well supported by Bryn Jones and Sashi Davies. Don't worry, I've got it covered. Go enjoy yourself, turn your phone off. So I jumped in the car with family and we drove up to Broome, staying in the old part of Broome there. But that timing coincidentally happened to be when the AusIMM Uranium Conference was on, which I'm an organiser of. So I couldn't help, but I woke up at Sparrows on the first few mornings to listen to the first lineup of speakers, sat on the veranda with my laptop and telephone, and the first one to speak was Treva Klingfeld, the president of the world-renowned Trade Tech Analytical Organisation. She laid it out. Drivers in the increase in spot price existed long before COVID-19. The elastic band is tightening. An estimated 45 million pounds of inventory has been taken out of the market with supply curtailment such as Kazatomprom and Cameco Cigar Lake. From a demand perspective, global requirements have increased and are averaging 2% per annum. The focus then turned to Australia. Non-OECD countries, Asia and India, are likely to drive the long-term growth. Utilities are expressing desire for diversity of supply and lowering their risk. And Australia, being on the doorstep of Asia, is geographically very well positioned and geophysically very well endowed to capitalise on that growth. Australia accounts for 30% of the world's known uranium resources. In terms of producers, new deposits take time to develop, new mines take time to build, and the most competitive projects going forward are likely to be small, easier to define and low cost. I'm listening to Treva and suddenly my phone goes. It pings, it's Guy Keller from the Tribeca Resources Fund. He said, Dunk, Treva's basically plugging Boss Resources. The remaining presentations continued along a similar vein, and I was pumped. Boss Resources and the Honeymoon Uranium Project tick all of these points, and we're in the box seat. I went back with a big smile on my face and enjoyed the rest of that family holiday. The graph here is a snapshot as we see it now. This is a Trade Tech produced graph, but the best one I have in terms of demand and supply. The orange bars are where the restart projects are required, and that is where Honeymoon will fit in. They commenced in 2022-23. When utilities enter into offtake from time of signing to first delivery is typically 18 to 24 months. Therefore, in the next 12 months, we need to start seeing offtakes entered into. And what's particularly important here is how well positioned we are to seize upon that growth. I've talked about the current work programs, such as the enhanced feasibility and bringing that stage 3 in. But while we've technically advanced the project, we've also evolved the board. Peter O'Connor, senior non-exec at Northern Star, chairs the company, having joined us at the helm in January of this year. Together, we have then recruited Wyatt Buck, who previously worked for Cameco and headed up MacArthur River, and then worked for Paladin, seeing its Langer Heinrich mine through from commissioning into its nameplate production, and then overseeing that operation plus Kalakira. We also have Dudley Kingsnorth, a very skilled metallurgist, and Bryn Jones, who I've had the pleasure of working with over the years as we've advanced the project. From a strategic perspective and marketing, Sashi Davies is one of the world's best uranium traders. So all in all, we're very well positioned. We did a capital raise last week, very much oversubscribed, 15 million raised. We have great support from around the world, nearly 50% institutionalised, demand coming from North America, Asia and Australia. To end the conference, I know I can't take you to flight, but here's the flyover. We're not there yet, but we're getting to the top. We're ready to rock and roll.
Duncan a warm welcome. Thank you. I think if you need someone to do a voiceover, a sing over that, there is a chairman out there that could probably sing pretty well for that song.